Hi there. Welcome to episode number 9 of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma and I'm your host. And I'm coming to you from what is beginning to look like a snowy Ottawa. It has just started snowing. There are big flakes coming down. And I live here in the snowy capital of Canada with my husband and my 2 kids and 1 rat and 1 cat. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later because normally I would say I live with my family and 2 rats and 1 cat, but unfortunately one of our rats passed away a week and a half ago about. So anyway, I'm coming to you from Ottawa and my name is Selma Knits on social media, so you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Selma Knits. And thank you for joining me today. As you can see, I'm podcasting in a slightly different location. I'm actually usually at that white IKEA chair there because we still don't have a proper dining room set. And you're seeing this as the background, this room, but now I'm in my living room this time. I just decided to podcast from here for a slightly different perspective. I think I was, getting a little tired of being in the same place all the time. So I'm in here today and trying this out to see what it's like. And yeah, so welcome. We also have a Ravelry group where you can join in the giveaways and the knit-alongs and all that stuff. The show notes are there. You can introduce yourself. There's an introductions thread. If you like, I love hearing about the people who have joined the group. And you can also ask questions if you have any questions that you want to ask me about knitting, the podcast, a larger part of my life, whatever, and I'd be happy to answer. So anyway, if you're new, thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy what I have to share with you, and if you're returning, thanks for coming back. So so I feel like even though I've got some pretty organized notes in front of me, I'm feeling somehow a little bit discombobulated, but hopefully this won't be a complete shambles. And if so, I apologize. But yeah, I have lots of things that I want to talk to you about today. I'll just tell you that I'm drinking my tea out of this lovely mug that my friend Sue, who is one of the 2 Tangled Skeins, got me at Rhinebeck. Hello, lovely. Hello, lovely. So in here today, I'm actually drinking an herbal tea by David's Tea called Le Digestif. I don't know if you can see that. And it's a very herbal tea. So there's apple, mint, fennel, ginger, peppermint, orange peel, with natural mango and peppermint flavoring. So it's a tea that I quite like, and so that's what I'm having today. So hope you grab yourself something to drink or eat or whatever. You're knitting, you're crochet, you're weaving, you're sewing, whatever, and join me. We will be talking about some finished objects, some works in progress. I'm going to do a sock review today. I thought it would be interesting to talk about socks that I made a couple of years ago and have been wearing to see how have they worn. So I've got a couple of socks to show you today. I will be announcing the winner for the Skaha giveaway that was going on in our thread. I forgot to do that last time, so I thought I'll do it today. And we'll talk a little bit about the CAL, and there'll be a little added video probably at the end of the video because I just seem to be having a hard time wrapping my head around getting something in the middle of the video. So anyway, I don't know which way you need to see the L, but I am a bit of a technological loser. So anyway, I'll do my best to get a video, an extra video in here of me and Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft talking about sweater making. And I've got a few little acquisitions that I'll tell you about at the end. And I'll tell you a little bit about perhaps Army the Rat and hiking last weekend and other stuff at the end of the video if you feel like sticking around. So that's pretty much what we've got going for you today. So let me start right away with the giveaway, just because I don't want to forget again and then end up waiting another 3 weeks or so before I podcast again. So this was the giveaway for the Deco Sweater, which was a sweater designed by Marsha Ibuki, who is also known as Fairy Little, and she also has a podcast. I showed it, 2 episodes ago now, and it was a lovely unisex sweater with a basket weave type of motif in the front. I had made it for myself. I originally wanted to make it for my husband, and it ended up being too small and ended up for myself. And I promise I didn't do that on purpose. I really wanted him to have the sweater. So anyway, Marsha kindly offered up a giveaway, and so we had a thread going for that in the group. And I did the random number generator thing before the podcast, and the winner was number 39. So congratulations, Carolyn or Caroline. I'm not quite sure which way you pronounce your name. This is Glengarriff-2007 or 2007 who won. And the prompt that I had asked you guys is there some technique or method in knitting or crochet, honestly, that you like doing that perhaps is not the most popular thing? And Carolyn suggested that she enjoyed doing the long tail cast on, and that sometimes she can get lost doing the long tail cast on and she's keep on going beyond what she needs to do, or however many stitches that she needs to cast on. So that was quite cute. And I have to say, I also tend to use a long tail cast on as my method. Unless I'm adding on stitches or something, I pretty much always use that method. And interestingly, I realize that I do it a little bit differently than other people, or at least I start it differently than other people. A lot of people start with a knot at the beginning, and I don't. So I'll see if I can show you guys at some point how I started, because I was so surprised that somebody would start it a different way. And I saw somebody casting on one day and starting with a knot, and that just kind of blew my mind. And she was like, well, how you do it? And I was like, I do it totally differently. If I had some yarn like right here, I could show. Here, I'll show you right now. Why not? Because I just happen to have a little bit of yarn. So I take 2 sticks, and let's say that this is the ball of yarn, but this is actually a finished object, and this is the long tail. I put the yarn between my hands like this, and I start by putting the needle up through the top, going through the thumb, grabbing the yarn that's around the index and pulling it through that, and then I've got 2 stitches, and that's how I start. Not a tutorial, just kind of a quick little demonstration, but I do it quite differently. So but I'm sure there are lots of people who do it like me, because that's how my mom taught me, and she would have done that in Finland, so I'm sure there are lots of people who start that way. But anyway, so that was what Caroline had mentioned in her post. It was very fun to see what people like doing. A lot of people like, seaming things, or cabling, or steeking. And it's fun that some things that could be intimidating to one are actually a real pleasure for another person. So, or intimidating, or just dull, or something they avoid. Some people love Kitchener. I can't stand Kitchener. So, things like that. It was fun. So thank you everybody for participating in that. And Carolyn, I'll get in touch with Marsha and have her send you the pattern. So you might end up just receiving it before you even watch the episode. So anyway, congratulations. So that's that. So next, I've got a couple of FOs today. One of them I happen to be wearing. So this I showed you last time, and I talked to you about the challenges that I was having with finishing off this sweater. This is the Deco Sweater, which is a design by Kate Davies. It's a lovely sort of retro cardigan, and I'll just show you. There you go. And I finished the knitting of this cardigan in the spring, but the band required putting buttons for show, and then the ribbon, which I had last time, and as I told you last time, I was really stuck on the snaps. And I did the snaps last night. I thought there's no way, I really wanted to podcast today, and I thought there's no way that I am podcasting and not having this done. So I sort of gave it to myself as a little challenge to get it done. And so I ended up adding snaps. And now, one very interesting thing I want to share with you is when I went to the store to buy these buttons, I bought them at a store here in Ottawa called Daryl Thomas. It's on Preston Street, and it's a sewing store. They've got high-end fabrics. They have a very good button selection. So I've gone in there for years to get buttons for my sweater. So I got these buttons there. And when I was talking to him about this sweater and saying that I needed to put snaps on it, he said that a woman had come in and had put together a garment of some sort, sewing, I think it was a sewn garment, and that she had painted the snaps with nail polish in the same color as her garment so that she wouldn't have these, really evident snaps. And he said it worked really well. And so when I first put the snaps on this sweater and they were black, I wasn't thrilled with that, and I thought, well, maybe I should paint them. So I don't know if you can see that, but they are painted so that they are not actually black. They are essentially the color of the sweater, because I just happen to have a nail polish, which is this color here. It's an OPI color called Amsterdam. And I just love this nail polish. I love the way it goes on. I love the color. It's like a deep burgundy. And so I painted the snaps and let them sit for 24 hours and then sewed them on. So it'll be an experiment to see how that works. Now I intend to wear this probably closed, because I kind of see myself wearing this with a skirt, a black or a tweed skirt at work. So more like a sweater than an actual cardigan. And I made this cardigan out of Joe Sharp, what was it called? Darn, my notes. Joe Sharp Alpaca Kid Luster. It was an alpaca mohair and wool blend, I believe. I think it's a discontinued yarn that my friend Holly had given me. And I was a little bit worried about wearing this next to my skin, but it's really quite comfortable. And but I have, I think, quite a high tolerance for itchiness. I don't get bothered very easily. If you have a low tolerance for that, then you probably wouldn't enjoy this next to your skin. But it's a stunning yarn. It's a very dense yarn, so I think that this will be a lovely warm thing to wear with a skirt or a pair of dress pants at work. So I'm really happy to finally have this. I've got suddenly a new garment in my wardrobe. So that's that. The other thing, I wasn't intending to have an FO. This is something that was being housed in this lovely bag that Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft had made when she came for our Rhinebeck trip. And I decided to make a hat for my husband because he kind of needs one. He needs one because the one that I made him last time was made out of Malabrigo Arroyo. So it's a superwash yarn, it's a thinner yarn. So it's a nice light hat, but I felt that he could use something a little warmer. And so I had this beautiful yarn that is this wonderful deep green. That is an Estelle Yarns Big Alpaca Bulky. Now I used 5mm needles, so it's a little bit of a dense hat, but it certainly isn't terribly tight. So I wouldn't call this really a bulky yarn. I would say it's more of a chunky yarn. And I simply cast on with 5mm needles, 80 stitches, did ribbing enough to be able to fold it over, and then for the decreases, when I thought it was time to decrease, I knit 8, knit 2 together all around, and then knit 7, 2 together all around, then 6, 2 together all around, and then when I got to 3, I decreased every row as opposed to every second row. And so it's kind of like a real fisherman's cap, I think, and very warm, really wonderful yarn. In fact, this is really wonderful yarn. I highly recommend this yarn. And I've got a second ball of this, so I think I'll be including that in a giveaway at some point, because it really is wonderful and it would be nice to share it. So that's that. Very simple. I didn't intend for it to be an FO, but once I started knitting it, it's one of those projects where it's just so fun and easy, and it was thick, so it was really fast, and I just kind of whipped through it and made this for him. So he is now, I just have to sew in the ends, and he will have a new hat as the weather is getting colder. I won't be saving this for Christmas or anything. I'm just gonna give it to him right away. Now, I knit this on my Lykke needles. I chose the very long thread, cable, and I was knitting this in the magic loop style. And I gotta tell you, even though I love the tips, I love the cables, the joins are generally really nice. Knitting magic loop with these, it kept undoing, and I kept having to, every row or two having to tighten it up. So I'm not sure if that's because these are my first interchangeable needles. I don't know if that's like a typical interchangeable problem, or if it's a little bit of a weakness in the Lykke needles. I couldn't really say because I'm just not that experienced with interchangeable needles. So if you have more experience with interchangeable needles and know that that is a typical thing to happen, or it really shouldn't happen, let me know. You can maybe put it down in the YouTube comments or in the show notes on Ravelry. But yeah, so I'm not sure that I would use my Lykke needles for magic looping again because of that. It was irritating. And it made it, I knew right away when it was undoing because the yarn wouldn't go up the needle easily, so then I just tightened it and kept on going. But that was a slight irritant while I was knitting the hat. I really enjoy the tips of these needles. Another thing that I have found with these needles is that sometimes it's really easy to get the tips onto the cable, and sometimes it's really not. And even with the key, it's really hard. So, there's a little bit of inconsistency from one needle to the other that I've noticed. I'm still going to knit with them, and I still enjoy them. I'm using them for one of my projects, which I'll be showing you shortly. And knitting with them in the round has been great, but magic loop, I suspect, not the best thing for me with these needles. Perhaps somebody else's experience would be different. So that was that. In terms of things that I am knitting on, last time I had just started the color work on my Branches and Buds sweater. I have since finished the torso. So I will show it to you. I've got things flying all over the place here. And I'm extremely happy and very excited and cannot wait to wear this. While I was doing the color work, I was really struggling, not to actually do the color work, but I was struggling with the floats and wondering, are they too tight? Are they too loose? And feeling like there was a little bit of puckering happening, and I wasn't sure, but they weren't tight because there's definitely a lot of stretch in this. There was no issue with that. And then I thought maybe they're too loose. I think in the end it's going to be okay. It may not be the best color work in the world, and perhaps an experienced color work person would look at this and kind of go, it was a nice try. But I do feel it's one of those things you got to practice a lot to get better and better at it, and it just becomes natural. But I felt like I was constantly stopping to check and fix the floats and make sure that they weren't too tight or too loose. And so it was really slow going for the color work. This was also the first sweater that I've made with a lighter yarn. Whenever I've done color work up till now, it's always been with worsted weight yarns, and this is a sport weight yarn. So sport weight Yeah, I would say sport weight. It's, and so I wondered if knitting at a different gauge was going to have an impact on it. Anyway, so it's turned out fine. And it'll be totally wearable and it looks beautiful and I'm happy with it. But I struggled, I'm going to say. Knitting the body just went whoop, and there's the bottom, and it fits very nicely. And so I'll now be picking up to do the sleeves, and hopefully next time I'll be able to wear it and show it to you. This is a truly, truly stunning pattern by Carrie Bostic Hogue that was in the first Making magazine, and I would almost make this again in, you know, completely different colors. I chose very sort of simple conventional colors, but I thought it'd be nice to, I'm really wanting a yellow sweater. So I thought maybe it'd be nice to have one that's yellow with white here or something like that, or different color work. But yoked sweaters really are wonderful, and they're very flattering to wear. They look good on everybody. You know, they give a nice line to the upper body. So yeah, and I am making this out of, the color work was the Andean DK. I think it was Estelle Andean DK, which is very nice. I used a small portion of the ball. The body is out of the Isolde blend number 1, which is no longer in the making. Very unfortunate, because I absolutely love this yarn. While I was knitting it with it, it's actually got a very subtle sheen to it. It's you know, somewhat heathered. I think I was watching Sarah of Fiber Trek the other day. Hello, Sarah, if you happen to be watching. And she was talking about Zwertbuls, and this was a Merino Polworth Zwertbuls combination, and Zwertbuls are apparently black sheep. And I thought, oh, and that is what is giving the black fibers in here, because the yarn has very, very fine black fibers in it, which is adding to the sort of heathered look. So anyway, I've really, really enjoyed this yarn. I would buy more from a D-stash from somebody, and I don't think that Isolde's got another blend. I haven't seen one. I went into her shop. I don't know if she's planning on doing more, but this was absolutely beautiful. Somebody had talked to me a lot about this shedding or pilling. I have no evidence of shedding whatsoever from this. Now, this was batch number 4, so perhaps things improved a little bit with time. I don't know. And it may pill a little bit, but it's certainly not pilling or showing any of the evidence of pilling while I'm knitting with it. And I find that yarns that are like super pilly usually start pilling already when you're knitting with them, where you can see that it's going to pill. And I'm not seeing any of that. So I think there may be some pilling, but there's often a little bit of pilling with sweaters, and nothing that a gleaner or some sort of little machine can't help you with. But I tried it on, very happy with it. The sizing is great. I thought it was going to be a little looser than it is. It's not snug by any means. It's got a nice amount of ease. But as I was knitting it, I wondered if it was going to be quite loose, which I was going to be okay with, because I wanted this to be just a relaxed Saturday kind of sweater. But it actually might be slightly more fitted, and maybe I'll even wear it at work. We'll see. So I've been knitting this on, I think, 3.75 needles, and 3.5 for the edge. So there you go. This is being housed in this wonderful Matterroot Maine trundle bag that my darling friend Kate gifted to me, and it's such a wonderful bag, like perfect for a sweater project. So, and I have since learned, after my last podcast, when I said, I don't quite understand how you close this thing, that you can fold it down and then close it, and then it's kind of a more sealed look. That's what I'm imagining. But I don't tend to do that. I find that it's a very deep bag, so everything just sits very nicely at the bottom. But it's such a great bag, and it's gray, and I love gray. So yeah, so that's one of the things that I'm working on. The other thing, I've got 2 more things that I'm working on. They're the socks that I spoke to you about. I think I've spoken to you about them more than once. They're very slow going. I'm now only knitting them at work when I have a chance to when I have a chance to take a break and go upstairs to another floor and hang out with a couple of knitters. I hang out with a woman named Shella, who I work with, who's the Baddie Knitter on Instagram, and with Sue, the Crafty Knitter 7, who's one of the hosts of the Two Tangle Skeins podcast. And we go upstairs to knit here and there at lunchtime, and I decided this is just going to be my lunchtime knitting project, and only that. So, you know, I figure I could probably make the second sock in about 10 lunchtimes. We'll see, because I usually end up having about 40 minutes or so of knitting time. But I finished the first one. I decided to just let it be what it's going to be, because I really do prefer a sock with a gusset. And this is Wendy D. Johnson's basic gusset heel, I think, and I have it memorized, and it's what I use every time. I knit my socks toe up, and I cast on magic loop, and then start the gusset and do the heel and keep on going. And so I just decided I didn't care what was going to happen with the striping. That's all right. This is Felice yarn, which has been a pleasure to knit with, in the Doctor Who colorway known as Time Traveler. And Knit Picks is apparently having a sale. I don't know if it's finished already. This really is wonderful, wonderful, reasonably priced yarn, and so many fun color combinations. I knit mine magic loop with Chaogu needles, which I really like. But you have to like a stiff cable, and that stiff cable is not everyone's jam, as we say these days. But I really like it. And I made a pattern. I'm using a slip stitch pattern called Slip and Swirl. Oh dear, who was that by again? I can never remember. That I was gifted by my friend Amy. Chris Loves Wool. So it's the Slip and Swirl by Chris Loves Wool. I've shown it to you guys before. And super easy, but I find very effective. Like, I just really like the texture that it creates on the sock. So that's still a work in progress. And the last thing I showed you guys last time, the slippers that I made for my daughter for her upcoming birthday. She hasn't seen them yet. Hopefully she won't catch a glimpse of this podcast or last one, but so far they're a complete secret to her. And she keeps wearing my husband's gigantic slippers around the house, so they will be a great gift for her, very practical. And I decided that I wanted some as well. And because I don't have the greatest sock knitting mojo right now, I can feel it coming back a little bit, but I'm really much more into sweaters and shawls right now, although I don't have a shawl in the needles. And I thought, I have so many beautiful sock yarns, and I don't want them to sit there. And this particular yarn was a yarn that my friend Dana in Germany gifted me. It is, you know, a hand dyer whose yarn was being sold, or who was selling her yarn in a market. There was no real name to it or anything like that. And I just didn't want this to sit around anymore. And so I thought, and it's got a rustic feel to it, so I thought this could be wonderful for a pair of slippers. And then I'll be wearing them every day, and then I'll get to think about my friend Dana every day. So I decided that's it. It's a great way to use up yarns that you have, and then you get to see them every day when you wear your slippers. So I've just started, and it's got a wonderful variegation to it. So unlike my daughter's where there was pooling, this will just really be speckled. It's a very nice dye job. And then, so that's the beginning of the first slipper. Making them on 4mm needles by Chaogu which I'm going to have to change because I'm just about ready to go into the round, so I'll have to change the needles because these won't work. So yeah, the label was simply like this. It was called, let's see how my German is, Versuch Kauningen Sockenwolle, something like that, right? And it was a 75-25 combination. And I'm housing this one in the little tote bag that I got at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which I spent my time at that yarn festival a lot with Dana, who gave me the yarn, so I thought this is a fitting bag for this project. So this, I don't know what kind of bag they'll have this year, but this was their sort of simple project bag that they produced last year when I was able to go. So many people are starting to talk about going to Edinburgh this year, and I will definitely have Edinburgh envy because there's no way that I'll be able to go this year. That was kind of a special trip. Maybe it'll happen again in the future, but for now, not gonna happen. So I will enjoy all the pictures that people will be posting on Instagram and such, and people's accounts in their podcasts, but I won't be one of those people. So that is all that I am working on these days. So I thought I would mention a little bit before we go on to the sock review. We've got a knit along going on in the group. So if you're new, you will not have heard about this. We have a knit along called Garments Galore, and so the hashtag is Garments Galore Cal, if you want to post on Instagram. And so this is a knit along that's going until the end of March, so still plenty of time to join in if you want to. And whips are welcome. So this is a cal for garments. If you are knitting any sort of garments, whether it be a skirt or a sweater, cardigan, dress, jacket, poncho, shorts. Somebody was talking about knitting shorts the other day. So yeah, anything is welcome that is a garment. So it should be something that covers your torso, essentially, in some fashion, not an accessory. So we've got a giveaway, we've got a finished object thread, we've got a chatter thread, and we also have the first sweater thread. So if you're making the first sweater you've ever made for yourself, then you can post it in there. And also I am co-hosting this knit along with Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft. And she's got an extra thread for the Mount Everest. So if you are knitting a garment that will require more than 1,400 yards of yarn, you can also post in her finished object thread for that and have a chance to win prizes. I will be gathering some sort of prizes. I would like to find a sweater quantity to give away because I think that is fitting for such a giveaway, but we'll have more than one prize. If you're a maker or somebody who would like to donate a prize, get in touch with me, and it's a way for us to showcase your wares as well. So let me know, get in touch with me on Ravelry, for example, if you happen to want to do that. As I mentioned at the beginning, when Kate was here for her trip to Ottawa and to Rhinebeck as well, we did a couple of little videos. And so that video will be plunked into this podcast somewhere, and we are talking about our recommendations for a first sweater, since in the little segment that will be showing up in mine. In hers we talked about something different, so you'll have to go and watch hers. And so I hope you enjoy that. It was funny because we did the video that's going to be in my podcast first, and I think we were both a little sort of nervous and awkward, so I think we're much more relaxed in hers and I think we're a little stiff in mine, but that's all right. Hope you'll enjoy it wherever it happens to appear in this video. So Kate.
Yes.
We're having a little awkward moment here.
We are.
What would you say is a suggestion for somebody who's perhaps knitting a sweater for the first time? What would your advice be?
I think, one, you have to be very brave and just go for it. Mm-hmm. Because it's only knitting and you can rip it out.
That's true.
and just keep practicing, because I have done that with sleeves repeatedly. The other thing is, I would advise a first sweater to be a top-down sweater, because you can try it on as you go along much more easily than a sweater you're knitting up, or a pieced sweater, because you can't really get the feel of how well it fits. Whereas if you're working from the top down, you can check very quickly whether it's going to fit in this area, which is sometimes where the fit's awkward. So that would be my advice. I think the pavement sweater is a very good one to start with for that reason.
Yeah, and I think Tin Can Knits also have so many top-down sweaters.
Yeah.
Even is it called the flax?
The flax seems to be, I haven't knit it personally, but it seems to be the one that an awful lot of people would use first.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you that the top part of a top-down sweater is probably the trickiest, because sometimes the necklines can be overly large.
Yeah. And as well, although in one respect the top of the sweater is the part with the most work with the shaping, at least when you've it done, it's just knit, and you feel as though you've the hard bit done, and it's not ahead of you all the time. I think if I'm knitting bottom up, I always think of, oh well, if the shaping is still to do, but it's quite nice. I have this theory: if there's something hard to do, you do it first and get it out of the way,
right?
And then work with the easy bit.
Yeah.
That would be my advice. What about you?
Well, on that vein, although I think my advice is a bit different, but another thing that could be a good shape to start with is the ones that are a bit boxy, because shaping is less important, sizing is a little bit less important, so something like that as well.
Yeah.
But I think my advice would be really about being honest with what's going on. And if you've got a little red flag, listen to the red flag. If you're thinking, oh, the neckline's a little loose, be honest about it, because by the time you get to the end of the sweater, it's a little too late to determine that the neckline is too loose. So I think I tend to gauge things constantly, because I hate ripping anything out. So if I can fiddle with it and make it work, I'd rather do that. And so I'm constantly trying things on, or constantly checking them out, or measuring them, and taking the time to do that. So if you start making a sweater and you've got a little red flag about the neckline, I'd say stop.
Instinct is very important.
Yeah.
I think instinct is important. There have been times that I have not gone with instinct and regretted it. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, because by the time you get to the end of the sweater, it's a little late.
Yeah.
Depending on where the issue is. But yeah, so I think that would be my thing, to try and be as honest as possible, and use your intuition or any knowledge you have, people around you, the mirror, a selfie camera, to have a look and say, is this really working for me? So I think that would be my suggestion for, well, not even in the first time, but always. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
So if you want to see the question that we've asked one another, you can also watch Kate the podcast and see what we talk about there regarding garment knitting. So the next thing I thought we could do is the sock review. So how many pairs of socks did I make myself last year? Last year I made a lot of socks. I made 17 pairs of socks. I can't remember how many I gave away and how many I kept. So I made a lot of socks last year. My sock making before that, there were fewer. But in the last 3 years, I started making more socks, and I thought I'll show some of the older ones so that we can see how the yarn has worn. I have to say that most of the yarns that I've used have been good good yarns. Some are superior and some are good. There's one yarn that I used and the dyer is no longer dyeing, so there's not much point in showing that, but where the socks actually felted, and I had done a rather intricate pattern. I mean, if you really want to see it, I'll show it to you sometime, let me know. And that was very disappointing because I do put my socks in the I don't put them in the dishwasher. I put them in the washing machine. I wonder what would happen if you put them in the dishwasher. That's a lot of chemicals that are being used in the dishwasher. But I do put them on the gentle cycle in the washing machine, as I do with store-bought sweaters. Even if I buy a sweater and it says that it's machine washable, regular cycle, I tend to put it in the gentle cycle. So I'll put all my gentle cycle stuff together, and the socks go in there as well. I don't hand wash my socks. A lot of people do. I can't be bothered. And I do figure that socks should be able to withstand the gentle cycle in the washing machine. And I wear my socks a lot. And I do find with wool socks that you can wear them more than once. And so I do think they get soiled enough that I want to put them in the washing machine. And so that one yarn that I used felted, and that was really disappointing. But other than that, all the yarns I've ever used have always withstood very well in the washing machine. So two that I have made, you know what, I didn't check exactly when I made them, but I'm going to say probably about 3 years ago, are these two socks here. So I'll talk about this one first. This is Night Owl Fibers, and she is a lovely dyer who sells on Etsy, who started dyeing yarn very young, actually, Rachel, and she also has designed some patterns. This is a sock that I made, and I used a slip stitch here, which was just a lovely slip stitch pattern with a self-striping yarn. This is her basic sock yarn. It's a merino nylon blend. It's a lovely feeling yarn. And I have worn these a lot. It's a beautiful, beautiful yarn to wear, I have to say. It's very soft, but you can see that there, from my boots, there's a little bit of pilling happening in the back, but overall, and I haven't gone and de-pilled these or anything, it has really worn very beautifully. Most sock yarns do a little bit of a felting thing here, for me anyway. I think it probably depends on how you stand, but these have not thinned in any way, and I really have worn them a lot. So this is a testament to her yarn. I would definitely use her yarn again. It's really beautiful. And this was her Sherlock Holmes colorway, and just beautiful, just beautiful. So this worked out really, really well. Yeah, you know, there's the occasional little bit of pilling, but not a whole lot. And yeah. The other yarn that I wanted to show you, and this is also a pair of socks that I made about the same time. They were made at around the same time, about 3 years ago, I think, maybe 2.5 years ago, and that I've worn a lot because at that point I didn't have a lot of socks. Last year I went crazy and made a lot. So those socks aren't being worn as much, whereas these socks got worn a lot. This is Lezu Fingering by Julie Asselin. And this is a sock yarn that is a merino, I'm pretty sure it's merino, and silk blend, 10% silk blend. So there's no nylon in this sock yarn. And it's got a slightly different twist to the yarn than a typical yarn, and I remember having this conversation with somebody. I do not remember what the twist was. Could it be something like an Andean twist? It's got a slightly different kind of twist. I think this is a very, very interesting yarn, and I absolutely love it. I would make many more socks out of this yarn. I never thought that silk would make something so durable, but this yarn, I'm gonna say, if I do the sock review again in the future, you'll notice that most yarns have that little bit of felting that happens on the bottom. This does not. And I've worn these a lot. No felting whatsoever. tiny little bit of pilling here and there. Here's one. Very little, but a very, very well wearing yarn. And this, oh geez, what was this called? I think this was called, it was either called It's My Party or Piñata. I can't remember. I'll put it in the down bar or in the little corner here. And I used Estelle Socket to me for the toes and the heels. A lot less happy with this. I used this yarn for a vest. I knit a garment out of it. Loved it for garment knitting, but I don't know, it's gotten kind of, I don't even know how to explain it. I don't know if you can, it's gotten kind of a little grimy looking. It's not that it's pilled, but it has kind of done a little bit of a, I don't know if you can see that, bit of a weird, unattractive fuzzing. So I'm not sure I would actually use this for a sock again, because I don't like the way it's worn very much. I don't think it's very attractive. I don't know if you can see what I'm talking about. Just gotten kind of muddy looking a bit, whereas this looks absolutely beautiful. And this is just a plain sock, and I did an afterthought heel. I'm not a big fan of the afterthought heel, I have to say. I much prefer a gusset. I find, not that these slide down or do anything, they fit, but I just find, especially if you're going to put a pattern on it, I find the gusset makes the sock go on more easily, and I like the way they wear. I ended up having enough, because the yardage is very good on here, to make a second pair of these socks for my daughter as well. So she has a pair of these, and I have a pair of these, and I love them. And I would use the Lezu again. There's a tiny bit of fuzzing here. I don't know if you can see that. Just a tiny bit there. But really, really, really great yarns. Both of these. Highly recommend. So that was that. Hopefully that was of some interest. I think it's always nice to know how sock yarns have worn, because it's one thing to say, oh, it's beautiful, but what has happened over time? You know, did it fall apart super fast? You know, and become a dish rag, or have they worn? So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. Hopefully that was useful. So the last little bit, I thought I'd just share a couple of things that have come into my life, a couple of patterns. John, who is Bearded Shield Designs, and he's also got a podcast, has just come out with a new pattern called La Tulipe et la Rose. And he gifted this to me. It's very, look at that. Doesn't that look like something from the 20s? Very Art Deco looking, absolutely beautiful. And he is offering a coupon code right now for 25% off with the code Macintosh 2017. So if you're interested in this and making such a beautiful, intricate shawl, feel free to use that code. I was just thinking, how much do you need? It requires 200 grams, so probably 2 skeins of sock weight yarn. So beautiful. Thank you very much, John. It's really nice. Another pattern that came into my life through the Get Your Wishes Granted on Instagram. I've never played before, and I thought, oh, I want to give some things away, and then I made a couple of requests, and one of them was for the Wickerwork pattern by Michelle Wang. Yes. That I have been eyeing for a rather long time, and was eyeing more seriously recently. So I thought, well, I'll put that in the wishes, and thank you very much for granting it. My knitting pattern Santa. So I am going to look for yarn for that. I've seen a couple of people, well, pretty much every project I've seen on Ravelry of this sweater looks good. And I often use that as a gauge of whether I want to make something. I'm unlikely to make a pattern without being able to really see how it wears on other people. I'm a little bit cautious that way generally. So I'm not usually on the bandwagon at the same time as everybody else. I feel like I'm always a few steps behind in terms of knitting patterns. But I want a sweater that's going to fit, so I tend to be a little bit conservative. And it just, if you watch Katie of Inside 23, she made it. I believe a Jenny who is Tiny Paper Foxes and had the podcast called Tiny Paper Foxes that then became the Woolen something and Woolen podcast. Suddenly out of my head. Anyway, it'll be right there. She also made this, and both of them, that just looked beautiful, and on Ravelry the products were all nice, and so I thought, I think I want to make that. And so that's a worsted weight pattern I'm looking forward to making. In terms of other making, I have had this yarn in my stash for a rather long time. It's called Ethical Twist. It's a DK natural color yarn from the UK, and I have 1,500 yards of this, and I've been wanting to make a sweater for a long time, and over the last couple of months I've been really seriously looking at patterns for this, wanting to do something with cables, and had a whole bunch of ideas, but nothing was really speaking to me until I saw this one pattern. And then I walked and I favorited it on Ravelry, and then I walked into our local yarn store called Wabi Sabi recently, and happened to pick up a magazine, and the pattern was in the magazine, and so I just bought the magazine. So it's the recent edition of Knitwear, and not edition, what do we call it? Anyway, so many little brain blips, sorry. So I got it. It's the Janice or Janice sweater. It's this one here. And it's so beautiful and elegant. I think it would look lovely in a different color as well. It's got a split hem at the bottom, and it's full of cables. I don't love cables. I love cables. I don't love doing cables. I don't love making cables. But I feel I need to get over that. And I've made lots of sweaters that have a little bit of cabling on them. So now I'm going to be making one with a lot of cables all over the place and every row. So let's see how that goes. And I'm going to start this probably soon, because I'm afraid that if I don't, I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose the momentum. So I brought out the yarn. I'm going to wind this today. I'm going to start swatching so that when I finish the branches and bud, I'm going to start it. Let's see if I finish it all in one shot, or if I need some palette cleansers along the way. But yeah, this publication has such a serious lot of great patterns in it. I am quite taken by many of the patterns in here. There's another one that's got lots of cables that's just beautiful. Kind of a shorter, more cropped sweater. There's another one that is made with bulkier yarns that I really like as well. That's got cables, lots of really, really lovely patterns, and many of them. And there's a whole section on mock cables. That's pretty cool. Different kinds of mock cables, all using sort of make ones and decreases to create the illusion of cables. There's this one here that's just stunning. Anyway, it's really full of wonderful garments, and I just can't stop showing you, because look at that. A lot of cables. I find often in the fall magazines there are a lot of cables. And I even like this fun hat with a big pom-pom on the end. So this was a super duper one. The sweater that I want to make is by Irina Anikeva, and she has another pattern in here that I really, really like. Look at that. She's an interesting designer. I've been following her, and she started designing and seems to have really picked up momentum and is doing a lot of really beautiful and interesting things. And just a stunning detail on the side there. Very clean, crisp design. I really love it, although I have to say that if I were to make this for myself, this crew neck with no sleeves. Not a great look for me. It makes me look a little on the overly butchy side, so I think I would want to modify it slightly, but I'm really quite intrigued by that. But the one that I really want to make, in addition to the Janice or Janice sweater, is this one, which is made of alpaca, which is why I think the cables are not popping, but it's full of cables and it's a boat neck. And I'm also really thinking about that one because I have a yarn upstairs that I think would look beautiful with that. So, and I say upstairs because that's where my yarn closet is. So anyway, really happy that I found this. This is not white as the sweater is. It's more of a cream, but I think it'll work beautifully. I also got the recent Making Magazine number 4. I don't know why they call this a magazine because it's really more of a book. It's also truly, truly lovely. And so many lovely things and different styles of projects. Not only knitting, there's lots of sewing, although this project by Susan B. Anderson is absolutely adorable. I'm not a toy maker, but this makes me want to make a toy. Look at those kitty cats. Look at those kitty cats. And there's a beautiful quilt pattern, a simple quilt pattern, lots of different things going on in here. And this very cool apron that I wouldn't mind making, and there's a gorgeous kimono. There's lots of great stuff. It's a beautiful publication. It's the kind of thing that you come back to every once in a while. I like to look at magazines and books just before I go to sleep, and then I kind of fall asleep with the images of those things. And the Making magazines are things that are the types of things that I like to have next to my bed. Excuse me, a frog seems to have entered my throat. The last thing I'll share with you, so as you know, the Lick needles were my first set of interchangeable needles. Well, now I have a second set of interchangeable needles because I love Chagu needles, and I happened to be on Amazon one day and they happened to have them on sale, and with free shipping I thought, okay, I'm just doing it. So I haven't tried them at all yet. They arrived and I put them in my show and tell pile for the podcast. But I'm very excited. I can't remember what this was called. What was this set called? The twist set, I believe. And it comes with less tips. It comes with 7 tips and with just a couple of cables. So I think I would probably want to get more cables. And so I can't tell you a whole lot, but it's got space so that if you want to buy more tips, you can. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to trying this. It's a very small, kind of a smaller case than the Lick needles, and I'm very excited to try these and see what it's like, and hoping that the attachment is more secure. But I know I'll love knitting with the tips because I just love Chagu needles and I love their cables. So I just did it and bought it, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you good things about them. If not, I might just not be an interchangeable knitting person, because up to now I've always used just fixed circulars and bought the different sizes and so forth. This is definitely a more economical way of doing it in the long run, but you have to enjoy it too. So let's see. I'll let you know a little bit more in the future. So I think that's it for knitting content, except for one little thing. I made this shawl a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that. This is the Calera by Amba O'Brien, and I love this. I wear it a lot. I made it out of Seattle Dye Works yarn, which is the darker variegated gray blue, and some Queensboro alpaca, which is an Ontario alpaca producer. And I was very upset the other day because I noticed a problem. So this is going to be my next challenge, is fixing this shawl. So I'm going to show you here, so maybe next time. Basically what seems to have happened is that the alpaca cut somehow. Not the Seattle dye works, but the alpaca has. So I'm going to have to pick up the stitches and darn it in some way. This is not something I enjoy doing or I'm good at doing, and it causes me the same kind of angst as all the, the issues around here. So we'll see, but I'm hoping to be able to do it in such a way that it probably won't be perfect, let's just be honest, but I really love this shawl and want to be able to wear it. I love the two yarns. The Seattle Dye Works yarn was absolutely stunning. I think it was a merino silk base, and it was gifted to me, and it's stunning. And the Queensboro alpaca I had been wanting to use for a long time, and it's such a squishy, wonderful shawl that I often have underneath my coat. So I definitely want to fix it. So hopefully I'll be able to fix it before the next time I'm on, if I can get over my anxiety about it, and I'll be able to show you and share that with you. So that is officially the end of the knitting content. Thank you. So yeah, I'll just let you know quickly that our little army guy, Army, the rat, I mentioned to you last time that he wasn't doing well. Rats at around the age of 2, which is how old he and Einstein, his brother, they were born on October 26th. Apparently rats start developing tumors, and that they're benign tumors, but they grow quickly, and that is usually what is the cause of their demise. And that's essentially what happened to Army. He got a huge tumor on his back, and he actually ended up passing away, and he's buried in our backyard. Along with my dear cat who died on June 1st. I started podcasting on June 17th of this year. And I always told you we had 2 rats and 1 cat. But I had had 2 cats and 2 rats until June 1st. My cat Suko was 18 and she passed away. We got back from Italy on the 31st of May, and about an hour after we got home, she got visibly very physically ill and passed away the next morning on June 1st. It was very devastating, I have to say, and I never talked to you guys about it because I couldn't. And even now I'm finding it a little bit challenging to talk about. She was my kitty cat soulmate. So she and Army are both buried in our backyard. So our backyard is becoming a bit of a pet cemetery. And Ida wanted to bury Army under the lilac tree, and Suko is buried in our flower bed, and I'll be planting flowers next spring there. We'd wanted to put tulips, but I just never got around to it. So I think I'm going to plant something next spring to remember our little people by, because they do become little people, I have to say. As a friend said to me, she said, you know what, Selma, you're going to love anything with 4 legs and fur. And it's totally true. I absolutely love animals. I really do. And I almost feel like the love that I have for animals is a little different than the love that I have for humans. And yeah, so anyway, that is the story of Mr. Army. He was a real sweet little guy, I have to say. And his brother was very freaked out by the whole thing, very visibly freaked out. I've learned a lot about having rats. I've learned a lot from them. It's been an interesting experience because I mentioned to you before that I was really phobic, and the thought of even having rats in my house was, I thought, insurmountable. And I didn't think I was going to be able to get over it, and I got over it really quickly and learned so much about, you know, their little personalities and their emotions. And in Army, as he suffered, I saw how he was suffering, and I could see, you know, when they're joyful and when they're not, and when they're irritated about things. And it's been a very interesting experience. And yeah, so we'll see how Einstein does on his own. He so far has been healthy. And so that's that. And then last week we had a wonderful hike. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen some pictures just before the weather. It was a beautiful weekend. It was cold, but absolutely sunny. So we were not alone hiking. Lots of people were out hiking in the Gatineaus. We have hills just on the Quebec side, and I'm going that way because we could actually see them down the street, because I live on a somewhat hilly street, so we're a little bit higher up and we can see the hills in the distance. And so we went for a beautiful hike in the hills last week with the kids, and they each brought friends and we brought a friend, and we just went for a hike, and it was absolutely beautiful, to some ruins called the Carbide Wilson ruins, which are there from the 19th century, from a man who actually was trying to produce some sort of phosphorus-based fertilizer, I believe, and had a whole plant there and everything, and they're in ruins now, but it's quite beautiful. And so we went there. And so we're getting close to the end of November. My daughter's birthday is in the next week or so, and so we'll be celebrating next weekend with the family and close friends, and then the weekend after she'll be having her birthday party with her friends, and she's getting very excited about that. And then we'll be getting into December and getting things ready for my family to leave for South America. I think I told you last time that my husband's taking the 2 kids to Uruguay for Christmas. They leave on the 23rd of December. I'm not going, partly because I've had a lot of vacation time this year, and the tickets were also ridiculously expensive. I kind of regret that now, just because I'm like, okay, well, I'll be here. We'll be celebrating Christmas when they get back. But they'll be there, and I'll be spending it with my mother, and probably going to visit my father. And at the same time, I get the house to myself for 2 weeks. That's like kind of exciting on another hand. So we'll see what I get up to during that time. So I hope to podcast at some point before Christmas, but not 100% sure when that's going to happen. So I do hope to see you again before then, and to show you what I've been up to. So thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully this has been not too speedy or discombobulated, and you've been able to enjoy some of the stuff that I've been showing you. And we'll see you next time. Happy crafting, and hope that life is treating you well during this time. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.